For people who love to shop at Joann, the fabric store with about 800 locations around the U.S., time is running out.
I just finished a quilt and I said, oh my God, where am I going to go now?
You like to go in and touch and feel and look and colors, see if it matches things when you're making stuff. You can't do that online.
But now the one-time largest fabrics retailer in the country, which has some 19,000 employees, is closing all of its stores.
I'm going to be sorry to see this go.
It's just part of what's expected to be a record-setting year of 15,000 retail store closures, with Party City, Big Lots, Walgreens, and Macy's just some of the companies shuttering locations.
We've got policy upheaval with tariffs. We've got demand upheaval in terms of competition.
John Mercer is the head of global research at Coresight, a firm focused on technology's impact on retail.
It's not how much consumers are spending, it's all the other factors around retail.
Yeah, we think it's the context. We think consumer spending is pretty strong. It's where that spending goes.
Massive summer sheen haul.
He says online discount retailers like Temu and Shein are eating into many brick and mortar businesses as shoppers grow frustrated with poor customer service and locked up goods in stores. They're also chasing the cheapest prices. Adding to the trouble for retailers, Americans are growing more pessimistic about the economy. The Consumer Confidence Index released today down almost 7%, the biggest monthly decline in almost 4 years. The record number of store closures expected this year raises the question, what's to become of the real estate occupied by the retailers in all this upheaval?
Robert Schellenberg has been on death row in China for several years, but federal officials say the former Abbotsford resident was not among 4 Canadians executed there.
The families have asked us not to give any details, and they want us to make sure ultimately that we are protecting their privacy.
The Foreign Affairs Minister now has a tightrope to walk with Schellenberg and an estimated 100 other Canadians still in Chinese prisons.
We will continue to engage with China as we'll continue to not only strongly condemn, but also ask for leniency for other Canadians that are facing similar situations.
While China executes more people than any other country in the world, it is rare for them to do this with foreigners. So this is a deeply troubling development.
Former diplomat Michael Kovrig spent more than 1,000 days locked up in China.
The Chinese government is mindful of international perceptions of it. It does care how other countries view it. So to take this step is frankly demonstrating what kind of China it wants the world to see.
The 4 executed were dual citizens and have been accused of criminal activity linked to drugs. The embassy in Ottawa says China doesn't recognize dual citizenship and has a zero-tolerance stance on illicit drugs.
As a universal human right, we oppose the death penalty in all cases, regardless of the nature of crime, characters of the offender or the accused.
Relations deteriorated when Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou was detained in Vancouver in 2018. Then the 2 Michaels were arrested and jailed, and Schellenberg's life sentence was upgraded to death.
We have not been doing very well. In fact, since the arrest of Meng Wanzhou, things have not much improved.
Recently, Canadian levies on some Chinese products and their retaliation with tariffs have revived tensions.
The timing of the execution, I don't think, is accidental. It's just to show to Canada, look, you will have to make concessions if you want to see the relationship improve.
Penny joins us now. Penny, have we heard anything from the families of those 4 Canadians?
No, and Minister Jolie was adamant that she preserve their privacy. Their executions, as you can expect, further complicate a really complex geopolitical landscape. Strengthening trade relations with China in the wake of U.S. tensions is off the table. Multiple experts are urging the government to take a careful and defensive position when dealing with China.
Now, 2 ICE detainees at the Denver Contract Detention Facility, it's in Aurora, escaped and are now at large this morning.
Yeah, Fox 31's Carly Moore was tipped off to the situation and is on it live out there this morning. Carly, you have the new developments?
Janelle Drew, good morning. These people are still on the run at this hour. Yesterday, when we were here actually reporting on another story, we saw ICE officials combing the area. Take a look at these pictures. These are the people that ICE officials are looking for. This is 24-year-old Gaylon Vito Romero and 32-year-old Joel Jose Gonzalez. After I got that tip about the detainees escaping, I reached out to ICE and asked, how did this happen? They didn't answer that question, but Aurora Police added more context here. According to their report, around 9:30 Tuesday night, the ICE detention facility lost power. Then a door in the soccer facility unlocked. That's when we're told the two men walked off. It wasn't until 2.5 hours later, when staff did a head count, they realized 2 people were missing. Aurora police say 911 was called at 2:30 a.m. and APD showed up at 5:30. A statement from ICE claims differently, though, saying local authorities were notified immediately and declined to assist with the search. Aurora Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky says that's not true. She says to their knowledge, the detainees were being held on civil detainers, not criminal. So getting involved is a violation of state law.
There is a state law here that supersedes the jurisdiction of the Aurora Police Department. ICE knows that. It is not a fair statement to say that we refuse to get involved. This is completely on ICE.
Here's what Aurora Police tell us. We received late notification about the incident and upon response learned the event occurred several hours prior. And they went on to say, as a municipal law enforcement agency, we do not enforce federal immigration law and cannot participate in large-scale searches or follow-ups. So a lot of back and forth going on with this incident, a lot of finger pointing. Governor Polis also weighing in. We have his statement on our website right now. But the bottom line is, guys, these 2 people are still on the run, still at large right now. So if you know where they're at, give the ICE tip line a call. Live in Aurora, Carly Moore, Fox 31.
Concerning situation, and the finger pointing is kind of an interesting side story to this as well. We'll continue to track. Thank you, Carly.
At Heathrow Airport, Europe's busiest travel hub, chaos unfolded after a fire at an electrical substation knocked out power, forcing the airport to close for the day. More than 1,350 flights have already been cancelled or disrupted, including several from US cities. Ryanair has stepped in, offering rescue flights between Dublin and London Stansted to help passengers stranded by the closure. Meanwhile, Lufthansa cancelled all flights to and from Heathrow. Flights from Tokyo, Hong Kong and other cities have been rerouted or turned back. Qantas diverted its flights to Paris. While the fire has now been brought under control, the disruption is expected to last several days, with experts comparing the impact to major events like 9/11 or the 2010 Icelandic volcano eruption. Thousands of travellers are stranded and authorities are still investigating the cause of the fire, though there's no evidence of foul play.
At least 8 people died near Nigeria's capital Abuja after a trailer crashed into halted vehicles and burst into flames, according to police on Wednesday. The accident happened on a busy highway near the Nyanya Bridge in Ayo, around 10 kilometers from the city center, after the trailer laden with cement lost control and rammed into 14 vehicles that were stuck in traffic.
The fire that ignited because of the multiple crash was aggravated because of the CNG that were used to power the trailers that caused the multiple accidents. The fire quickly spread to all other vehicles, which trapped many people inside.
With the absence of an efficient railway system to transport cargo, fatal truck accidents are common along most major roads in Nigeria. In January, 98 people were killed in a gasoline tanker blast in north-central Nigeria.
Now give you some news from South Africa, where at least about 7 people have been killed in the last 24 hours in shooting incidents linked to a taxi rivalry in central Johannesburg. The 2 separate incidents of the deadly taxi violence rocked Johannesburg. 4 people have been shot dead in suspected taxi violence in the Jepstown. While in a separate incident on Wednesday, 3 taxi drivers were killed in a similar shootout in the southeastern part of the city. Both shootings are believed to be linked to rivalries between taxi associations. In Johannesburg, the taxi industry has been plagued by assassinations and violence for decades. This as minibus taxis are the main mode of transportation for a majority of the South Africans. South Africa has a high murder rate that averages to almost 75 killings a day. These murders are largely attributed to the long-running taxi wars in Johannesburg. Now, to give us more updates on this, we are joined by our correspondent Calden Ong, who is joining us from Johannesburg over the phone line. Calden, what is this taxi rivalry all about, and why was it so deadly? Is this something that happens regularly in Johannesburg?
Saleh, taxi violence actually, not just in Johannesburg, but throughout the country, across the country, actually remains a significant problem. It is fueled by competition over routes and also leadership battles within taxi associations. As you mentioned in your read, that this taxi war or turf war is nothing new to South Africa. People have been experiencing this since the late 1980s, and it's still going very strong. As per authorities, they say the taxi violence has recently been increasing in various provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, where Johannesburg is, also Eastern Cape and Western Cape. So it's a problem that is being faced by all the provinces across the country. And today's incident, actually, as you mentioned in your read, is the second incident in a week. Number of people, those shot and dead, has risen to 7. So far, there's been no new updates from the authorities. As of 11 a.m. this morning, police have said no arrests have been made, but they have been able to identify the vehicle used by the suspects. Saleh, also, yes.
Calvin, the obvious question is this. If this is a regular feature of these taxi rivalries, what does the South African government do? Why is it that it's not been able to put a lid on this kind of turf war between these different gangs who are also operating these taxis?
Saleh, you must remember, a taxi industry is a private associate, but it's commonly known as a public transport. It's the largest, taxi industry in South Africa is still the most reliable, and it is also the most preferred method of transport for 60% of commuters in the country. It's not that government hasn't been trying. In fact, South African Police Services have established a separate entity itself to, investigate these murders, this fight, this taxi rivalry. But it seems somehow they're not able to come in terms with taxi associations. Like if you go on a street in Johannesburg, if you ask people about taxi, people are actually very scared. They talk about taxi bosses. They talk about gang leaders. They talk about all these things. And, it is a good question, on the street when we ask a common South African who uses a taxi transport, are you not scared? Because in most of these cases, when there's taxi rivalry, like today, when there are shootouts, so who are the people that died? It's the innocent bystanders. People don't just go for a kill of a particular person. So they randomly come and shoot at taxi ranks. That's fact with people. And these things usually happen at a time when people are going to office or universities, Unfortunately, the incident that took place on Wednesday, there was a university student that got shot. And in many instances also, the children that's just playing on the street who get shot at. So this is a menace that South African government has been trying to resolve, but they have not been winning for a very, very long time.
All right, indeed. Thank you very much, Calden Angmu, for joining us and getting us all those updates.
South Africa is actively engaging with the Trump administration to enhance its trade relationship with the United States despite ongoing diplomatic tensions following expulsion of its ambassador. Presidential spokesperson stated on Thursday that President Cyril Ramaphosa is committed to strengthening ties, particularly in trade.
Equally, the president is keen that we look at the opportunity to research the relationship between South Africa and the United States, particularly on the trade front, where there are a lot of opportunities to expand the trade relationship. The TTIC is leading a process to look at that basket of tradable goods and look at how we expand it so that at an appropriate time, when we begin to have escalated engagements between ourselves and the Trump administration, we're able to also take a more forward-looking approach.
The South African Department of Trade, Industry and Competition is leading efforts to review the range of tradable goods and identify new areas of economic collaboration.
The President is going to take his time in considering his options with regards to this appointment. The absence of an ambassador in Washington does not mean the absence of engagements with the Trump administration. Equally, just as you have here in South Africa, the US has not appointed an ambassador yet, but we've been able at various levels of government to continue to have engagements with diplomats from the US Embassy.
The diplomatic tension escalated earlier this week when U.S. Secretary of State declared South Africa's ambassador to Washington persona non grata, citing accusations of race baiting and criticism of President Donald Trump.
Now, Turkey riot police fired tear gas and rubber bullets as demonstrators protested for a second night outside Istanbul City Hall over the arrest of Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu in a graft and terror probe.
Now, clashes broke out between police and protesters as thousands took to the streets over what they call the undemocratic detention of Istanbul's mayor.
Protests took place in various locations across Istanbul and capital Ankara despite a ban on gatherings, police barricades, and dozens of detentions over social media posts.
A handful of students tried to cross the barriers, prompting scuffles with the police who fired rubber bullets. Thousands of opposition supporters gathered outside the Istanbul municipality building. They waved Turkish flags and chanted slogans in protest of the decision, while main opposition Republican People's Party, the CHP, leader Özgür Özel addressed them from on top of a bus. He warned the police not to provoke demonstrators by firing tear gas or rubber bullets.
There is no quitting the struggle without getting our rights, without saving Mayor Ekrem, without freeing the mayors of Istanbul. Do you promise? Do you promise? Do you promise?
Now, Dilek İmamoğlu, the wife of detained Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, also accompanied CHP leader Özel during the protest.
Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, who is President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's main political rival, was detained before dawn on Wednesday, just days before he was to be named as the candidate of opposition CHP party for the 2028 presidential election. After spending his first night in custody, İmamoğlu urged the nation and the judiciary to take a stand against what his party described as a political coup.
Meanwhile, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in his first comments on the detention of Istanbul's mayor, said that the main opposition party is seeking to cover up its own mistakes and deceive people with theatrics. He said he has no time to waste on opposition's theatrics.
They have lost the balance so much that they are in a state to attack our police, hurl threats at judges, prosecutors. If you pay attention, the CHP and its media are not responding, cannot respond to both the issue of corruption, theft, and the issue of the diploma. Instead, they are choosing the easy way of provoking their own base and deceiving the people by confining the subject to political slogans.
Hamas is responsible for this war. It invaded our towns, murdered our people, raped our women, and kidnapped our loved ones. Hamas refused offer after offer to release our hostages. In the past 2 weeks, Israel did not initiate any military action in the hope that Hamas would change course. Well, that didn't happen. While Israel accepted the offer of President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, Hamas flatly refused to do so. And this is why I authorized yesterday the renewal of military action against Hamas. Israel does not target Palestinian civilians. We target Hamas terrorists. And when these terrorists embed themselves in civilian areas, when they use civilians as human shields, they're the ones who are responsible for all unintended casualties. Palestinian civilians should avoid any contact with Hamas terrorists. And I call on the people of Gaza, get out of harm's way, move to safer areas. Because every civilian casualty is a tragedy. And every civilian casualty is the fault of Hamas. I thank President Trump for his unwavering support for Israel. Our alliance with the United States has never been stronger. To those who criticize Israel, I ask, what would you do if terrorists murdered and kidnapped your children? you would do what we are doing. In the face of pure evil, free societies have no choice but to fight. So I want to assure all our friends around the world, Israel will fight and Israel will win. We will bring our people home and we will destroy Hamas. We will not relent until we achieve all these vital goals. And we will not rest until we give our country a future of peace, prosperity, and hope.
Now, Hamas says that it has fired multiple rockets at Tel Aviv. In the latest escalation, the Israeli military confirmed that about 3 crude rockets were launched from southern Gaza towards central Israel. According to the IDF, one of these crude rockets was intercepted by the Israeli air defenses, while the other 2 fell in open grounds. Now, there are no immediate reports of any injuries whatsoever from these crude rocket attacks. Now, this is the first time that Hamas has carried out a rocket attack such as this since the 7th of October in 2023. Now, the Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, said that the responsibility for the attack, saying that it bombed Tel Aviv with a barrage of M90 rockets in response to the massacres that Israelis are committing with a campaign of relentless bombardment in the last 72 hours. The Israeli army has banned traffic Thursday on Gaza's main north to south artery. An army spokesperson said that IDF soldiers began a targeted ground operation in central and southern Gaza Strip in order to expand the security zone between northern and southern parts. Now, this came a day after Israel announced renewed ground operations in the Palestinian territory. It also issued what it called a last warning for Gazans to return Israeli hostages and to remove Hamas from power. Now, referring to a warning earlier this month by US President Donald Trump, the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz urged the citizens of Gaza to take his advice. Now, Katz said that the other option will open up if they do, including the possibility of leaving for other places in the world for those who want to. Now, Katz also claimed that Mohammed Sinwar, brother of the slain Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, will bring complete ruin to the Gaza Strip. Several reports claim that Mohammed Sinwar is trying to rebuild the group at the moment.
The first Sinwar destroyed Gaza, and the second Sinwar will bring its complete ruin. Soon, the evacuation of the population from combat zones will resume, and what follows will be far more severe. You will pay the full price. Return the hostages and remove Hamas. The alternative is total devastation.
At least about 10 Palestinians were killed and dozens more were injured in the early morning bombings that the Israelis carried out earlier today. Gaza's civil defense agency said that at least 504 Palestinians have been killed in this wave of bombings that the Israelis have carried out in the last 72 hours. According to Gaza's health ministry, the number of those killed includes more than 190 children. And amongst them was 2-year-old Omar, who was killed in a bombing by the Israelis in Khan Yunis.
يا حبيبي يا ابني يا حبيبي وين ابني راح وينه وين ابني راح وينه امانه لي اياه وينه هاتوا لي اياه امانه هات شيلوه هات امانه شيلوه اروح في عند الامانه.
Now, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has called Israel's latest wave of bombings a catastrophic crime and has said that the United States shares equal responsibility for green signaling this wave of bombing. The first stage of the ceasefire, remember, expired this month amidst a deadlock over the next steps. The Israelis had rejected any negotiations for a promised second stage, instead calling for the return of all remaining hostages under an extended first stage. Earlier, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis claimed to have targeted Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport with a hypersonic ballistic missile. The Israelis have ever claimed that they managed to intercept that ballistic missile prior to crossing into the Israeli territory.